Hey, event yackers, glad you're here today. In this episode, I speak with destination wedding planner Terri Consolati. Now, initially, Terri dabbled with and dipped her toe into the wedding planning pool. She was hesitant to jump in, but after a while, she took the plunge, and now she's swimming in the deep end. And her career has evolved into something that she now really, truly loves. And that's the best thing any of us can actually hope to achieve, right? That our chosen path is something we love and enjoy and are inspired by. And we can hope to inspire others also. It's clear Terri loves what she does, and she was a joy to meet and to talk to. She's also a very clear and passionate advocate for the location in which she lives and works. We all talk about supporting local. Well, Terri actually puts her money where her mouth is and creates opportunity for her local destination wedding partners to kind of strut their stuff. And this has helped the area become a viable and bustling destination for escape weddings. Something that a lot of people might be thinking about since the beginning of this year. She's actually made me want to come up and visit the beautiful Berkshires up in Massachusetts. Not necessarily for a wedding. Well, unless somebody out there wants to invite me up. Never actually crashed a wedding before, but I might be good at it. Who knows? Hey, let's learn some things about destination weddings with Terri Consolati.
Playback ending in 5.
Standby fade music, standby talent.
3, 2, 1. Clear.
Music go. Talent go.
Welcome to Event Yak, where event pros share their stories about the past, present, and future. I'm your host, Terri Walters. Hey, Yaksters. Today we have Terri Consolati, and Tara's on the line with me right now. Welcome, Terri.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. We were going back and forth with email before we got on the line, and we were talking about the various gyrations we need to go through to avoid our dogs becoming part of our shows.
That's right.
So, we're all various places. My dog the other day, I think I mentioned to you, I was doing an interview, and he was so relaxed that he was just snoring behind me, and I had to poke him. So we do have to all go through some weirdness these days to get through what we need to do.
Definitely true. My dog is sitting across from me right now in one of the chairs that she's really not supposed to be in, but she's, as long as she's good and quiet. Right now she's sleeping, and then, we'll be good as long as one of my cats doesn't try to open the door and come in and start tearing things apart.
You've got multiple challenges, it seems.
Yeah, just a few.
Yeah, exactly. So you tell me a little bit. I think you consider yourself a wedding planner. I went to your website and it says, you do wedding planning, unforgettable wedding experiences. Tell me a little bit how you got into doing wedding planning.
Well, let's see. I call myself the reluctant wedding planner because I had no desire to do this at all. But I was always somehow in the wedding industry or in the events industry, usually on the back end, helping some of my clients. I used to help with marketing and social media and stuff like that. And so it seemed like most of my clients ended up being in the events industry. And so I would do styled shoots for, different blogs like Style Me Pretty or Well Wed Magazine or different places like that. And then people started saying, why aren't you just planning these weddings? And I'm like, no way. I never, ever, ever will do that. But I know a lot of wedding planners. I can refer you to somebody who's amazing. And so, and then I had like brides. So those were vendors. But then I had some brides that, would call me and they would say, hey, I saw this in Style Me Pretty, or I saw this in a magazine or whatever. Would you please help me plan my wedding? And I would say, oh gosh, no, I don't do that. And so one bride was like, I really want to work with you. And she had told me this horrible story about she had hired a wedding planner who took their deposit and then ghosted them. And
Ah,
so I was like, oh my gosh. And so I felt really bad, but I still didn't want to do it. So I gave her a high price, which I thought was high at the time. Now it's like nothing. And she was like, yes, let's do it. And I was like, oh crap. so, that's kind of, I guess, how it started.
wow.
And then I started doing it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I actually love this. So, and then that's how it all started.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. That's kind of cool. Do you find that you're like, I know that weddings, there's a lot of trends in weddings.
hmm
Are you a person who is like enamored by trends?
So let's see. I mean, yes and no. I guess it depends on what the trend is. I mean, if it's something like, oh, I don't know. I can't even think of a trend right now. So maybe the answer is no.
That's
I
good.
mean, I guess I just, when I talk to, I definitely know what's going on in the industry. But honestly, like, when I think of a trend, I think of mason jar glasses. And if I never see another mason jar glass again in my life, it'll be too soon. So, like, I think sometimes trends are kind of not amazing. But when I start to work with my couples, I give them a few different homework assignments, like I want to get to know them, and I want to know their personalities and their hobbies. And one of the first things that we do after talking about budget and like their priorities and stuff like that, is I ask them to just, if they haven't already started a Pinterest board, by all means, start something like that. But I don't want them just pinning other weddings. I want them to, do searches for whatever inspires them in their day-to-day life, art or food, or whatever it is that they really love that they find themselves pinning that's not wedding related. And, I want them to snap some pictures around their apartments or their homes of like what their favorite piece of art is or favorite piece of furniture. Is there something they pass on their way to work in the mornings that they love? And so, they really have fun with that assignment. And then I can kind of see what their real style is instead of them just kind of, regurgitating another wedding.
So you let them kind of create their own kind of trend, which is, I think, kind of cool.
I think so. I just want it to reflect them. And I
Yeah.
know, that's kind of like almost like a catchphrase, like everybody says that.
Hmm.
But when the couple walks into their tent or their ballroom or, wherever it is that they've chosen to get married, their barn or whatever, um, and they just have that, they're like, oh my gosh, this was exactly what was in my head. But most of the time, they don't even know it.
Right.
So, and that is my favorite part, I think. I think that's my favorite part of the day.
So when they come in and they have that reaction, that kind of jazzes you.
Yeah. I mean, because they're always there, every single one is just like, oh my gosh, this was exactly it. And I didn't even like, it's like they didn't even know that was it. And I mean, of course, I don't necessarily know it either. But I'm just kind of trying to glean from what they've sent me and then put something together. And, of course, the whole process is a collaboration. So
Hmm.
I'll send them design concepts and stuff, and they'll be like, oh, I don't love this. But then, when they see it all come together, they're usually pretty excited.
Awesome. Well, I think that's what really makes a good planner is you may not know kind of how you want to do it, but how to get to it. That's all.
Yeah. Well,
Cool.
hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. So you you do events in the Berkshires.
hmm
Tell me, first of all, let everybody know where the Berkshires are, and tell me what makes them a great destination to have or a location to have a wedding.
Sure. So, the Berkshires is in the most western part of Massachusetts. It's full of like, history and culture and this natural beauty. And we're 2 hours from Boston and about 2.5 to 3 hours from New York City. So we're really smack dab in the middle. which is perfect because it's driving distance. For most of my clients come from Manhattan. But I have had some clients from Boston, several from the DC area, from LA. I've had some from Montreal. But with the exception of LA, it's mostly driving distance.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of them are coming up from Manhattan. Most of their guests are coming in from Manhattan, and it's just a really nice getaway. We're the summer home of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. So that's, Tanglewood, a lot of people will know. A lot of people come to they grow up going to summer camp here. So, there's that familiarity with the region. There's places like Edith Wharton, who was an author in the early 1900s, I believe, and she built the Mount, which is this beautiful Gilded Age estate. The Berkshires is called the Inland Newport because it was, all these Gilded Age mansions that were the homes of like the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers and the Sloans and, the relatives of J.P. Morgan and all these people that they would make their way from Newport to the Berkshires and then to New York.
Okay, cool. So it's kind of like a stopover from there back in the time where, we didn't have cars that went, 70 miles an hour.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. And so I've read that you're one of the most connected wedding industry professionals in the area there. How do you become that there?
So again, I think that was something that I just kind of fell into. Before, like right at the beginning of kind of my affiliation with the wedding industry, as I had mentioned before, I was helping people with social media and marketing and that kind of thing. And I've always been addicted or obsessed, I guess, with events, just my own. Like we would have people over and it would have to be, perfectly curated, and it would drive my husband crazy. He'd say, "Can't we just watch football?" And I'd be like, "No." So, so one of my clients founded the Lennox Wedding Tour, which was then changed to the Berkshire Wedding Tour in the years that followed. But it was basically a familiarization trip or a fam trip to the Berkshires. And she, had this vision that the Berkshires is much more than what people really know it for, and on the wedding side of things. And so she asked me to join that committee, which I did, and we brought wedding planners and bridal media and photographers, all in like the higher end range of the industry. We invited them to the Berkshires. It was their responsibility to make it to the Berkshires, and then once they were here, they were wined and dined and put in the best inns and hotels that we have, and for let's see, I think they came on Monday and then they left on Thursday. So they got to tour our venues and sample our, catering companies and see our floral designers and all that stuff so that they could see, this is a place you can bring your clients and we can compete with what's going on out in the world. So I started with that organization and really just met really everybody in the high-end industry in the Berkshires. So everybody that was a event professional, even like the DJs or whatever, like we really met everybody because there was so much networking involved. And that went on for about 5 years. And I think I was the only one actually that stayed on the committee for the whole time and just met so many people. And so from there was that name recognition because I was always kind of in those circles, trying to get sponsorships or, trying to cross promote and all that stuff. And then from there is when I founded the Berkshire Wedding Collective. So that's, it's been this natural evolution of everything that's happened. But even while all this stuff was going on, I still wasn't wedding planning. That's, the time when I was like, no way, I'm not going to be a wedding planner. but I think, that's really how I met everybody. And then from there, I connected with the people that would attend the tour. And then, we would build relationships and I would, meet some of their friends and they'd meet some of my friends. And, it's like the events industry, as I'm sure it's a huge industry. It's like billions of dollars of revenue that this industry brings in, but it's still such a small world.
Yeah.
And building relationships is like key.
I agree. I was going to ask you, like, what is do you find it really important, a really important kind of, not really advertising, but is word of mouth and relationships, that seems to be a really important thing in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not even 100% sure how it all works because I think it's just all organic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do try to remember to ask couples where they found me, and a lot of times it's Google. Actually, most of the time it is Google or Instagram, but I can't even tell you the number of times I've started working with a couple and they'll like scroll through my website or, whatever, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you did that couple's wedding?" And, I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "I was at that wedding," or, whatever, and so it's just funny how you seem to kind of stay within the same circles, even though they may not be finding you from those,
Yeah.
like from a word of mouth kind of way, but they're all traveling in that same. I don't know. I'm not sure how it works. They're all on the same Google search or something. I don't know.
Do you find that you're active on social media? Is this something you like throw a lot of your effort into?
Well, personally, I do not because I've hired a girl who does all my social media.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that she, really, I think it's of the utmost importance to be, to have a great presence, especially on Instagram. And it used to be just a few years ago, Pinterest was kind of the number one platform, but really Instagram has taken over. I'm actually a little fearful that TikTok might be coming up soon, and I do not want to deal with that. But I have somebody that does that for me, and it does make a huge difference. And it also, she was at the right price point for me, and it was such a huge burden lifted off my shoulders to know that it was being done. It was being done consistently. It was being done well. She knows the algorithms. So yeah, I mean, I do think social media is hugely important. But I also think if you can afford to, bring on a social media team member, that is a game changer.
That's great advice. That's great advice for people because not a lot of people think about that. They think, oh, I've got a Facebook account. I can just, do it myself.
Yeah, I think it's, it's important, like with anything, that you have a strategy. And that's something, I mean, I can preach about that, but I don't always do it myself. I know it to be true.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think it's important to have a strategy. But I also think that so many people, and I was guilty of this myself, I would think, oh, I can't afford to take on somebody just to do my social media, or I can't afford, I don't know what, business and development, or, whatever, research and whatever, all that, and then you look into it and it's like, oh, well, okay, first of all, it's not just one rate. Like you can find somebody that's a good fit for your business, and anything that you can do that can offset some of the tasks that we have as business owners, that allow us to actually do what we do best, and then we can give that to somebody else. That is like gold.
Yeah, because time is like your most important commodity as a business owner, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you kind of touched on the Berkshire Wedding Collective. Did when you were working at the Berkshire Wedding Tour Committee, I guess when you were on the committee, did that just kind of roll right into the collective?
It did because, with the tour, we were really focusing on the high-end weddings in the Berkshires. And what I was finding was, there was another organization, I mean, there still is in the Berkshires, but that focuses on weddings in the Berkshires. But they really focus on like local weddings. And so, which is great because we have a ton of local weddings too. But I also knew that, we have such a huge demographic that's the second homeowner, and the people that are coming in from New York and from Boston and Connecticut, or wherever, that have higher budgets, and I knew that we could accommodate that. So I felt like the people that were coming here to get married they really only had one resource that was showing you know, like the Holiday Inn Ballroom as a wedding venue and stuff like that. And I thought, gosh, we have Wheatley and the Mount and Stonover and Tanglewood and Blantyre and all these, and Massmoka, all these amazing places that really local people aren't using because for the most part it's outside of their budgets. But we could attract this crowd that really wants to have their weddings somewhere and they're looking for something different. And most of them are looking for like an escape and for their guests. And so that's kind of, fast forward, that's kind of how my whole tagline, what is it, Terra Consolati Events, uh, now I forgot what it is. Unforgettable. That's, of course. I forget unforgettable.
Oh,
Whatever that tagline was,
yeah,
it
yeah.
came from that, that your guests can have like an escape as well.
Great. And I think we had a little conversation before we jumped on the phone before, where you say that you're a destination planner. You're not necessarily, you kind of specialize in the Berkshires, but there
Yeah.
you kind of would go anywhere, right?
I would love to go anywhere.
All right, everyone.
If anybody wants to get married anywhere else, please call me. No, I love the Berkshires, and I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. I mean, it's an amazing place to live, and it's an amazing place, to work when I have all these great venues nearby. But gosh, if somebody would like want to get married in Italy or the south of France or someplace awesome and call me, that'd be great.
All right. Well, we'll make sure we put all of your contact information in the show notes at the end of the show. So
Yes, please do that.
sounds great. But so as like kind of quote unquote destination planner, you have a certain set of skills, I would guess. So how are you? What are the different skills that a destination planner has versus maybe someone who's not considered a destination planner?
hmm Well, since I've only ever been a destination planner, I can't speak like completely with authority on this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not exactly sure what I'm guessing, what I believe to be true is that, as a destination planner, one of the first things I'm looking at is the infrastructure of whatever region my couple wants to get married in. I want to make sure that they have, enough lodging, for their guest count, the transportation, that it's safe, and just I kind of want to know the lay of the land. So I'm going to look into all of that stuff first. I'm going to help them, manage their guest hotel arrangements, and so I know where everybody's staying, where they need to be picked up. I want to know who the top vendors are in that area, or if we need to bring some people in from, the next, like higher end hub, where we can draw from, those kinds of things. And I would imagine that if you're a planner that's only really focused on your home region or working with couples who are mostly local couples, you're not going to have, 100% of your guest count need accommodations or transportation. They probably live locally. So I think that that's probably the biggest, differentiator.
Yeah, it's like a different kind of set of problem solving skills. Like if somebody said to you, Tara, I want to
hmm
get married in, the south of France.
hmm
What would be the first thing you would do?
Well, I would research the town.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I would go to the, famous Facebook or Instagram and those places and see
Mm-hmm.
who is posting from those regions
Mm-hmm.
and reach out to them and, talk to them about their network and what they recommend. I just feel like it kind of goes back to the building relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I think, it's just great to reach out to people and say, what would you recommend? And, can we work together on something like this and make it amazing?
Yeah. It's like it's networking is just so important, I
Yeah.
think.
It's so important. If you don't network, and I hate going to networking events. People never believe it, but I'm actually very shy. And so, like, I really, really have always hated going to those. And, now that I know more people and I have friends in different places, it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would always have to do is I would have to be the one that's hosting the event. So I would create the events because once I have a role, it's like a piece of cake. I have a job to do. And so I'm networking and stuff, but it's like my job. It's not like I'm just going to go and be a wallflower.
It all becomes clear now why you have all these great organizations that have kind of spun off from you.
It's just because I'm shy and I have to do it myself.
Oh boy, that's too funny. So you talk about on your website, make your affair a signature, a Terra sorry, I just like slaughtered your name. Terra
right.
Consolati signature affair. What are the things that make things a Terra Consolati signature affair?
Well, I think, I mean, for me, as I had touched on before, like I just really want the wedding to reflect the couple. And, what I see so often is a planning firm or a design firm or whatever will kind of stick to a formula, and they'll say, we want these linens and this china and this glassware and so by saying a signature affair, I mean that I'm not relying on a formula. I'm truly going to create an event along with you. It's not like I'm just gonna, be this dictator,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really going to reflect you, and it's going to reflect your relationship and your families. So often I get to know their families very well, and I have a lot of moms in a lot of different areas that still email me. So I think that, and I think also bringing in a touch of my own personality, if it fits, really lends itself to kind of the overall signature design. I live in New England, obviously, but I grew up in the South in Virginia, and so I do try to bring a little bit of a touch of that Southern tradition, to the wedding event. So whether that's like, bringing in some monograms or, having my couples bury a bourbon bottle upside down, like silly things like that. We'll add in some fun stuff like that. Or I love to like monogram my clients' napkins, like have them embroidered or do some kind of something with a little Southern touch,
Mm-hmm.
which I just think, of course, I think it's amazing.
Okay, so I have to back up. What is the deal with burying a bourbon bottle upside down?
So, if you want a wedding day that has no rain, you go to your venue 1 month, exactly 1 month before your wedding day, and you bury the bourbon bottle. It can be whatever you like. It cannot be opened. You cannot cheat and take a shot while you're there. You have to bury the bourbon bottle somewhere on property upside down. So, of course, you have to get permission to do this because you want to do it in some place that's discreet.
Yeah.
If you're at a venue like Tanglewood or the Mount, we kind of have to be careful. You bury it upside down, and then on the day of your wedding, you dig it back up again. And you're supposed to have no rain.
Wow. And so
Yeah.
then everybody just, at that point, you can all take a swig out of the bottle, I would expect.
The bottle's gone in no time.
I have never heard of that tradition, and I am a bourbon person. So the more I can do with bourbon, the better.
Yes, it's super fun.
Do you have a specific event that you really, really remember?
Oh gosh.
And I know you don't want to single them out, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess a lot of them stick out for different reasons, like some are for crazy reasons, but I don't necessarily have a favorite anymore because, my mom always laughs at me. I'll be talking about whoever I'm working with. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're my favorite family ever. And she's like, oh, you mean more than the one that you just had last year, the ones that you were talking about last month. And I'm like, oh, so I'm really fortunate that I, for the most part, love everyone I work with. So I don't know. I mean, I guess a couple that stick out. I did a wedding at Wheatley, gosh, I don't know, maybe 2016, that to me was just classic and beautiful, and I loved the family. The mother of the bride is one that has stayed in touch. She actually just emailed me the other day, and like the grandparents of the bride, like it was just like I was part of the family, and the dad kept saying, you've got to come over here and have a drink with us. You've got to party with us. And I was like, I am working. So, but I find that happens a lot. So, I mean, this past season, I had a beautiful wedding at Blantyre, and just fell in love, with those families, because I was working with the couple and the parents of the bride and the parents of the groom. And so it was a big group of people and a lot of, cooks in the kitchen. But I can honestly say there was not a time when I ever felt stressed by working with the whole group, and I would go down and see them in New York for different events or, meetings and stuff, and just fell in love with them. So I don't know that any one really stands out over the other, but I definitely do have like some favorites.
Great. And so, I mean, and we were talking about trends a little bit before, and I know when people walk into the room, the table setting seems to be one of the grandest things that people react to. Like I walk into a place and I see a beautiful table setting and it strikes me. Have you done any like outrageous or whatever? Like, what is your favorite thing you've ever done for table settings?
Oh, one thing that I love is when I, can really convince my couples that they should have, high centerpieces and low centerpieces
Right.
and some runners on a long table, like, greenery runners on a long tables,
Right.
or like a hanging floral installation somewhere, or, something that is unique, and that makes your eye move all around the room, because that just adds interest. So I don't know that, any one table design ever really has stood out, because they're all very different. So I think, probably some of my favorite designs are the ones that I get to do on my own, like for styled shoots, which sounds probably really ridiculous. But, what I do find a lot of times with couples is they're not quite as, they play it safe a lot of times. And so, where I like to mix patterns and do like pattern on pattern, or use some different unique china, or add in some different colors, or use, vintage flatware or glassware, or something, like that's, I always have the freedom to do that in my styled shoots. And we actually just did one yesterday at the Mount, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this table!" Like we all
Right.
were. I mean, even the floral designer and like myself, the ones who collaborated on it creatively, we were like, "Oh my gosh!" We were, and then we were laughing, because we're like, it's like we're saying, "Oh, we're so awesome," and that's not what we were. Just as blown away that it came out as nicely as it did,
Right.
as like the photographers. But I think a lot of times couples will play it safe, and I think it's my favorite designs when they will let me kind of do my thing and make it like them, but let's maybe not have ivory linens today.
Yeah. I mean, how would you, like, to me, I look at that if I were, if I were in the market for a wedding, I would look at the stuff that you do. I mean, obviously you must show them you do the styled photo shoots and things like that to help you as a tool. I mean, I find it just, I would love for someone to, if I'm hiring a wedding planner, to kind of do that.
Well, and I mean, I'm very much on the same page with you. Like, I feel like, they've been drawn to me. Not every client is a good fit, and I'm not a good fit for every client. But the ones that come to me have come to me for a reason. So what is that reason? I mean, because really maybe the initial interaction has just been that they've come to my Instagram or something. So they must be drawn to something.
Right.
So that always, kind of excites me. Like, why did you find me? Or how did you find me? And how did you know that I was the one? And, so from there, I would think that they'd be like, well, you just do it.
Right.
You just do the design. Here's what we like. Here's our favorite art. You come up with a design, and then we'll do it. And a lot of times we'll start out like that. And then, they'll be like, okay, I really like this, but my friend from college thinks that I should just have white linens. And so it's like they start out and then they second guess themselves. And so, the best designed events are the ones where they really trust, their initial instinct to work with us. And then they just trust that we're not going to do something that's embarrassing or ugly, because
Right.
my name is on my business. So I don't know. Did that answer your question?
It does. I mean,
Okay.
it kind of leads me to another one. I mean, you have a lot of people in a wedding that are part of the mix, let's
hmm
just say. How do you navigate that gracefully?
You mean like people putting sharing their opinions?
Yeah, and also you've got the bride and you've got the person who's going to pay for the thing if it's
hmm
not the bride, and you've got the mother of the other person. And how do you gracefully navigate that whole web of funness?
Funness.
I mean,
Well,
it's part of everything, but go ahead.
yeah. I mean, I guess, every situation is different. So, but I think overall, from what people say about me, is that I listen. So, so I'll listen. I listen to everyone, and I just try to talk people through things, and I try to talk them through their designs. And if if one person wants one thing and one person wants another thing, which happens a lot, I kind of let them hash it out. And then there have been times when I've had to say, okay, look, you know, you, mom, have already had your wedding.
Hmm.
And I know that this is very important to you. And I know that you feel like your child doesn't know what they want. And I know that you're paying for it.
Hmm.
But, so I have to have stern conversations from time to time. Usually they're pretty well received,
Hmm.
not always, but I swear I should have gone to school for psychology, because I think, once the family dynamics enter in, it gets really tricky. So I guess that's kind of how I navigate it. And sometimes the couple themselves, they'll say, yeah, we don't really know what we want, and they'll defer to their parents. And that kind of always breaks my heart, because I feel like, okay, you already had your wedding, so stop trying to live vicariously through your kid's wedding.
Hmm. I would
But yeah,
I would think that that probably happens a good amount of time. Um,
yeah, it seems like I do have to step in. But then the wedding happens, and like the thank you notes and things that I get afterwards, or people will just say, you talked us off a ledge, or
mhm,
you were such a calming presence. And
mhm.
um, one of my fathers of the grooms last year said I was cool as a cucumber. And so I think that just listening and trying to, like, even just be a calming presence and speak quietly, and I mean,
Yeah.
instead of like getting all worked up, I think that all really helps.
Have you ever had, and you're going to love this question, I'm sure you get it
Oh
all the
boy.
time. Have you ever had a bridezilla?
um Yes, I guess I kind of yes, I think I mean, there are two that come to mind, and they didn't necessarily seem like bridezillas until the weekend of the event. Um, but you know what? Like, I was a bridezilla myself, which is a terrible thing to admit, but I really was. So I guess I kind of have a soft spot. I mean, thankfully, I don't deal with that a lot. I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but usually the worst person to deal with is the mother of the groom.
Is that right?
Not always. I mean, not always. But if I'm going to have problems with somebody, it's usually the mother of the groom. And it's not like horrific problems, but I feel like they're usually traditionally not the ones paying for the event.
Hmm.
And so they don't necessarily feel like they have an opinion. And I think that kind of bothers them. And so it usually, a couple times throughout the process, it'll boil over, and I'll get an email. I hate this. I can't believe they're going to do, but yeah, that I think if I've had problems with anybody, more often than not, it's the mother of the groom. I don't even know if you should publish that.
It makes sense. I don't even know that it's a problem. I think it's just a situation where Yeah.
Yeah.
They are involved in this beautiful affair, and maybe they just don't have enough. I don't know. I don't know what
Yeah,
it
like
is.
power or say
Right,
so or
right,
something.
right.
I don't
But I think
know.
that's probably typical. I think that's probably typical. Um,
Yeah.
um, so a lot of people, I think, having a wedding planner is a great thing. I think it's a great
Hmm.
idea. If I were going to have a wedding,
Hmm.
I'd be like, I got to have a wedding planner.
Yeah.
Why don't you think people utilize wedding planners as much as they should?
Well, I think, for two reasons. The first is just budget, because not everybody has the kind of budget that most of my clients have. And I'm not even in the ultra luxury circle,
Hmm.
but I think wedding planners are an expense, but you get what you pay for. And, but still, with all that said, like sometimes you just can't pay for it. So I think that that's a big reason. And I would think that, probably the other reason is that a lot of couples are very type A. And yes, they're very busy, with their careers, but they seem to work 24 hours a day. So they feel like I can do my job and I can plan this wedding. Or my mom just retired or has never worked or some was
Hmm.
a stay-at-home mom or whatever, and she really loves to throw parties and she's gonna plan it for us, and so I think that those are probably the top two reasons.
Oh yeah. Doing a wedding is just so easy.
Well, isn't that funny? I know it's, and a lot of times most people will hire me for the full service,
Hmm.
but the ones that hire for like our event management, which is like months of,
Hmm.
um, they a lot of times will come back and say, okay, we need more help. We're not going to, we thought we would plan this on our own and just have you come in the last month, but no, we need more help than that. So I do find that it happens, more frequently than not that they, end up coming back and needing more help with something. And so that's great for business, but, obviously,
Yeah.
um, but I don't remember if I had told you or not that I had recently launched, it just went live this past week, a wedding planning course. It's an online course and it's for couples who are planning their own weddings, because, there are a lot of couples out there who can't afford a wedding planner
Hmm.
or really do want to do it on their own for whatever reason. And so I did it, I wrote it like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, probably now.
Hmm.
And it's over 20 modules on, this checklist and what you should ask this vendor and what you should be looking for in this and this and this. And I never launched it because I thought, you know, I don't know what I thought. I thought, well, I don't want it to water down my brand. That
Hmm.
was one concern, and I just, um, I don't know. I think that was it really. I was like, I don't know if I should put this out there or not. And then I thought, there are so many couples that could benefit from this. And I just really want to help them have the wedding of their dreams, even if they maybe can't afford a wedding planner. And so I had started to launch it right before COVID, and then COVID hit, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. And then I had this aha moment, and I was like, this is exactly when I should do it. So I finally put it out there. I mean, it's brand new,
Hmm.
but I think that it's going to be really helpful for couples who, just don't have it in the budget to hire a wedding planner.
Do you think? Because I think the opposite. I mean, I used to think similar. I don't want something. I don't want to give away something for free because I'm
Mhm.
afraid then it does water down your own brand and your own job. But
Mhm.
but now I think differently as well. I don't know why that's kind of happened. Why do you think that scenario has happened in people's heads?
I feel like, it's been ingrained in our brains that we just have to hustle, 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 and that we have to be the best and we have to get to the top and we have to, and but I always, try to remember like my own wedding was not like one of the weddings that I do now. Like when a couple, they have to have at least $100,000 budget,
Right.
because I know that in the Berkshires, if they're coming to the Berkshires, that is a realistic number. Like it's just not realistic to do something for much less than that,
Hmm.
unless you have a very small guest count.
Hmm.
And so, but I always had to remember like that wasn't my wedding, and my wedding was still wonderful. And after, almost 20 years, we'll still be at like a picnic, at a friend's picnic or a cookout or something. And somehow the conversation always comes back to our wedding because everybody had so much fun. And ours was a destination wedding because I was living in Massachusetts and my husband is from Massachusetts, but we got married in Virginia. So people were flying down, driving down through the week. In fact, my mom was like, should I rent my big fat Greek wedding? Because I'm not sure how this is going to work out. I was like, yes, you probably should because we are a bunch of crazy people up here. So, because when she first found out that we were engaged, she was like, oh, I'll call the church and see if there's, if the church hall's available. And I was like, nope, that is not the kind of wedding that we were having. So I've always tried to remember that. And then I think the older that we get too, we're like, it's just not as important to, yes, I want to be better all the time. I always want to get better and I always want my business to grow.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like there is another market out there too. And if I can use like the stuff that I've learned to help somebody have a wedding, that they really want and help them figure out their budget and all of that stuff, then I just want to help them, so that they can have a great wedding. And I have to remember that the clients that come to me to plan their weddings are not the same audience
Mm-hmm.
that this course is even going to be in front of. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it'll be a problem, and if it is, then maybe I'm not in the right business.
Well, I think it's a brilliant idea. I think it's a great offering to have. If somebody wanted to take advantage of that, how do they do that?
Well, so the website is, let me think, what is it? It's weddingplanningcoach.com. I'm in the process of trademarking The Wedding Coach, but theweddingcoach.com was already taken by somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weddingplanningcoach.com.
Okay, great. And how can people, other than that, how do people get in touch with you if they want to talk to you or if they have a wedding that they want to do?
Well, so my main website is terraconsolati.com. And then, Instagram, they can DM me on Instagram. I do have the woman who does all my social media, but I do, look at it every day. So if they wanted to DM me, that's at Terra Consolati Events. And I'm on Facebook and, I have they can call me. But I mean, email is great. Anything, the contact form on my website, I hope that I'm pretty easy to get in touch with.
Okay. Well, I appreciate having the conversation with you. I learned a whole lot, and I appreciate that. It's always great to learn about something different in the events business. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for reaching out. I just really appreciate being on your podcast. It's awesome. It's been fun.
Well, that's a wrap for this show. Hey, you can show us some love by subscribing to the show wherever you're listening to us. Subscribing is caring. You can also find us at eventyak.com. The opinions expressed on Event Yak are the opinions of our individual guests and not necessarily the organizations to which they're affiliated. Event Yak is a production of Moonfish Production Limited. Thank you for listening. Be kind, be safe, and stand by to stand by.